Tree Tone is an incredibly unique device that generates tones based on the simulation of growing trees. This device is perfect for creating lush ambient soundscapes or mallet-like percussion. To hear it, let's start Live's transport. In the central graphic, you'll see the simulation of the tree. Each branch of the tree corresponds to a resonator. A resonator is a device that reinforces sound. So think of the body of an acoustic guitar or the throat of an opera singer. The length and thickness of each branch determines its resonator's loudness, decay time, and relative tuning. Branches on the left side of the graphic create resonators that are panned to the left, whereas branches on the right side of the graphic create resonators that are panned to the right. I can create a new tree just by clicking. Each tree is unique, so they all sound slightly different. I can select a preset tree type down below, or choose a random one over here. Sweet. Over on the left side, I have different exciters that I can route into the resonators of the tree to generate noise. Over here, I have a filtered white noise oscillator. Let's turn it down and see what happens. Notice that the branches stop moving and the sound is muted. If I turn up through, the noise oscillator bypasses the resonators in the tree and goes straight to the output. The noise is filtered, and I can change the filter's center frequency here. I can also widen or narrow the filter bandwidth. So if I turn this up, a wider range of the noise is let through. Wind randomizes the center frequency, bandwidth, and volume of the noise to create a lifelike wind effect. Speed controls the rate of modulation of the wind. So to hear how this affects the tree, let's turn through all the way down and turn noise back up. You can hear the wind creates a really unique, evolving sound. Let's turn wind down for now. Over at the top of the central graphic, I have the option of routing either pink noise or white noise. You can hear that pink noise creates a muted, warmer tone. On the upper left, I have the option to mix between different algorithms for the resonators. If I turn this value all the way down, a warmer, softer algorithm is used. If I turn it all the way up, it sounds slightly harsher and brighter. Below the noise, I have a different exciter, rain. Instead of exciting all the different resonators at once like noise did, rain plucks the different resonators one by one to create a percussive mallet-like effect. Speed controls the rate of the raindrops. Keep in mind that the rate of the mallets is random to simulate real raindrops. Spread controls the range of the resonators that can be hit. So if I turn spread all the way down, only the same resonator will receive a raindrop. Center controls the central resonator that is dictated by the spread. So if I turn center down, primarily lower resonators will be affected. If I turn center up, only the higher ones will. Low and high cut affect the EQ of the mallet used to trigger the different resonators. So if I turn up low cut, the raindrops will sound a little less bassy. If I turn down high cut, they'll sound a bit more muted. Let's turn rain back down and turn the noise back up. Over on the upper right is the tuning section. I can tune all the different resonators up or down here. Spread controls the range of frequencies that the resonators are tuned to. So if I turn spread down, all the resonators will be tuned to a similar frequency. If I turn it up, the range between the different resonators' frequencies is increased. scale quantizes all the different frequencies of the resonators to a particular key. So you can hear it sounds much more tonal and musical now. I can change the root note of the scale here by dragging up or down, or shift the resonators up different scale degrees. This simulates different chord progressions or voicings within the scale. In harmonic, if I turn this up, it slowly puts the frequencies of the resonators back to their unquantized state. I have many different scales to choose from, including pentatonic, whole, and diminished scales. Or I can bring in my own scalophiles to use, say for example if I wanted a microtonal tuning. In the case of scalophiles, tonic becomes offset. So instead of using semitones here, it's actually a ratio value. So if I turn offset to 2:1, that means the root note is an octave higher. Let's change the scale back to minor pentatonic for now. Down below, I have different global parameters. So to hear these, I'm going to turn noise all the way down and turn the range up. Decay controls how long the resonators ring out for. So if I turn this up, resonators ring out for longer. Panning controls the panning of all the different resonators here. And gain controls their volume. Above gain, we have the lock parameter. So by default, lock is on, which means that when I stop Live's transport, the device stops. If I turn this off, it runs regardless of what Live's transport is doing. So let's turn this back on and press play at the top. I'll turn rain all the way down. Now, in addition to using the built-in exciters, I can also route audio into tree tone to trigger the resonators. To do this, I'll click the mic icon, and over here I have a cool drum loop, and what I'd like to do is route it into tree tone. So to do this, I'll change no input to drums here. And you can now hear that the resonators are being triggered by the kick and snare. I can change the insertion point here. So since I'm using a drum rack, I can have just the clap trigger the tree tone. And I can change the volume of the input signal here. Let's change this back to post mixer, and I'll close this tab. Down below, I have different modulation and routing parameters for tree tone. So built in, we have 2 LFOs and 2 envelopes that I can route to any number of parameters. What I'd like to do is for the pitch of tree tone to go up and down over time. So to do this, I'll go to the routing parameter, I'll select LFO1, and I'll have the destination be shift. And I'll turn up the amount here. So you can hear the pitch of tree tone going up or down. I can increase the rate of the LFO here and change the shape over on the left side. Let's do sample and hold. In addition to using a hertz value, I can also sync the rate of the LFO to the clock. Let's do that right here. Right now the LFO is changing every bar. I can change this to quarter notes if I like, and maybe offset it a bit to make it come in a bit later. I can also re-trigger the LFO every time a MIDI note is inputted. This is useful for making the LFO a bit more rhythmic and in time with the rest of my project. So to do this, I'm going to create a new clip here and put in any note. This will just be used to trigger the LFO, and whenever I need it, I'll just press play. Now it sounds much more rhythmic and in time with the drums. I'll turn the drums off for now. Now you might notice that this note that I put in my MIDI clip is actually triggering the resonators. To prevent this from happening, I could go back over into routing and turn off key to mallet. Now, MIDI note messages won't trigger the resonators in tree tone. Let's turn the drums back on. In addition to using the LFOs, I can also route envelopes to different parameters. I'd like the amount of noise to increase at the beginning of each bar. So I'll go over to routing here and select envelope 1. I'll change the input to noise and turn up the value. So you can really hear in the beginning when the note is playing that there's a bunch of noise. If I go back, I can increase the release time to make this effect go on for longer. Let's turn down the gain. Finally, I'd like to use LFO2 to affect the pitch further. So I'll go over to routing and I'll have LFO2 go to tuning. And let's turn up the amount. I'd like the effect to be a bit sharper, so I'll change LFO2 to a square, turn on sync so that it'll be 1 bar here, and turn on retrigger so it's in time with the rest of the groove. Awesome. That's sounding great. Let's hear it with the rest of my beat.